Good morning, everybody. My name is Barry Schwartz, and this is the Search Buzz video recap. Today is Friday, August 6th, and this is the search news we covered at the Search Engine Roundtable at SEOroundtable.com over the past week. First, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Loud Interactive. Definitely check them out. They are a Chicago-based SEO firm led by Brett D. Payne. Really great guy. Check him out. Thanks so much for sponsoring, of course. We got some amazing news for you. Google said they are dropping the safe search factor from the Core Web Vitals. Specifically the page experience update signals. It's no longer a ranking factor. Google also said that maybe this page experience update is not a tiebreaker. They've been saying it's like kind of a tiebreaker signal. We'll get into that a little bit later. Google said that core updates do now impact local and image search, a kind of another twist from what Google was saying before. Microsoft launched in Bing MEB, Make Every Feature Binary, a new AI thing that makes search results more relevant, and much, much more. So stay tuned. All right, so first up, before we get into the big news, is that I posted the monthly Google Webmaster report, and that report basically recaps all the big things that happened over the past month with Google. Of course, we had the July core update, the link spam update, a bunch of unconfirmed updates, and a bunch of other things that you want to talk about, including the soft 404 redirection thing, which we talked about before, and so forth. Also, Google dropped AMP labels and so forth. So definitely take a look at that if you were on vacation for the past month. Some really interesting news there. Okay, so this week, a couple days ago actually, Google announced that they are no longer using safe browsing, which was originally part of the page experience update. One of the several factors in that page experience update was safe browsing. They're no longer using safe browsing as a ranking signal in this update. Google kind of implied that they never did, so I guess it never was, but they said it was. So Google's kind of reversing that, and with that, Google's removing any of these safe browsing stuff from the page experience report in Google Search Console. They actually made a bunch of changes to that page experience report, including fixing a bug with the HTTPS failure thing, which we covered about probably a month or so ago. And Google added a bunch of other fixes there as well. So just keep that in mind. The safe browsing signal, which Google said was originally part of the page experience update, is no longer a ranking factor there, and never was, I guess. Speaking of Google changing things, Google actually said this morning that John Mueller said that the page experience update is not just a tiebreaker ranking factor. It's more than that. He said it's not like relevancy, it doesn't determine relevancy, but it's definitely not a tiebreaker. I know a lot of Googlers, including John Mueller, Danny Sullivan, and Gary, all have been saying that this is a very, very lightweight signal. It's not going to make a big change to the algorithm, to the rankings, and so forth. Even Gary implied that this was a tiebreaker, or it's like a tiebreaker, he said in a podcast. So I guess Google's kind of reversing that messaging as well. Talking about reversing messaging, Google also reversed messaging around how Core Web Vitals, we know they impact, obviously, the web results. We know they impact the Discover, but Google recently said that they don't impact the local results. And now Google's saying, Danny Sullivan said, well, maybe it does. He basically said it impacts all types of content, including not just local search, which he said it didn't originally, but also image search. Danny Sullivan says core updates can involve image results or any type of content because they involve our core ranking systems that themselves involve all types of content. That's why our page about them mentioned content. Anyway, and then Danny Sullivan was like, well, Rusty Brick's going to say that he said core updates don't impact local. And generally that's the case, but he basically said sometimes they can. So sometimes Google core updates can impact not just Google web search and Discover, but also could impact image search and local, but it depends when. Microsoft Bing announced big news this week that they have launched what's called MEB. And MEB is basically a Make Every Feature Binary. It's what it stands for, with the feature being not included. So it's not MEB, but MEB sounds better, I guess. And it's basically new AI. It's trained on crazy amounts of training material. And it basically makes the Microsoft better understand intent and relate that to what's the most relevant result for there. Microsoft basically said it has improved relevancy based on it understanding and looking at the data from this, basically saying that it improved click-through rates from the search results and so forth. So it actually is working. Microsoft also said that this is live for 100% of all searches, any region, any language in Microsoft Bing. So definitely take a look at that. Not exactly sure when it launched, but it did launch recently, and it's now used for 100% of searches in Bing. Google has officially removed the generic rich results type from the performance report in the Google Search Console. Google announced this months and months ago that it's removing that generic type because Google has specific rich result types for everything. So for whatever you might use rich results for math markup or for reviews or for product stuff or whatever it might be, Google has all those types of specific rich results laid out in the performance report, so you can actually filter by each individual one. But now Google has removed the generic one from the performance report, which we were told about, and it actually happened on August 1st. Google has added new guidelines to the math solver markup in the help documentation. The guidelines specifically say that they don't allow like promotional use of this, like affiliate-based content, and the results have to be accurate. You can't just show math solver problems and have inaccurate math solver answers. So there's a bunch of other content guidelines and technical guidelines, so definitely take a look at that if you are using math solver markup. Gary from Google implied that you may get a ranking benefit if somebody steals your image. So somebody's stealing your images and they kind of embed them on their website and they're using the exact same image as you. Google might pick up on that and say, you know what, the source image is from here. These people are stealing it, and maybe actually give you credit for it. Of course, if they link to your image, you're definitely getting credit. But if they're stealing it and not linking to it, but they're copying the exact one, Google may somehow figure out how to give you credit for that image. Danny Sullivan explained that for knowledge panels, some knowledge panels look different. Some knowledge panels have books, some knowledge panels have movies, some knowledge panels have cameos, some knowledge panels just have basic information. And Google figures out what to put in that knowledge panel sometimes based on queries. So if somebody's searching for Barry Schwartz's books, or Barry Schwartz's movies, or Barry Schwartz's, height, Google might go ahead and say, you know what, people are most interested about these types of queries, and thus the knowledge panel would actually focus in on what most people are interested in when they do searches for Barry Schwartz. Pretty interesting. Danny Sullivan kind of implied that or said that on Twitter. SEOs are kind of split on if they will no follow versus rel sponsor versus nothing on affiliate or sponsor links. So as you know, link spam update launched a couple weeks ago, and Google kind of promoted saying, you know what, you should really use the rel sponsored as opposed to no follow. And Google then said, no, you don't have to. You can just still use no follow. So Aleda Solis basically did a poll asking you, will you switch it from your sponsored content to rel sponsored on your links? And 33% said no, we're going to keep it followed. 33% said no, we will keep using the no follow. And 33% said no, yes, we actually will split it and change it from no follow to rel sponsored. So again, SEOs are split. Surprise, surprise. Google said when it comes to a site being down and pages being removed from Google's index, that usually happens. So let's say your site is 500 erroring out and you're not getting traffic because your site is down and server issues. Google will eventually start removing your pages from the index. But that takes a longer period of time for Google to remove pages from the index than from actually bringing it back. So let's say your site's down for a couple days, maybe half of your pages go away, and it takes several days for Google to actually remove it. Google will actually bring those pages back into the Google index faster. Generally, we bring it back into Google's index faster when it figures out that the site is back up and running, because Google is faster at bringing pages back into the index and removing it, according to John Mueller. Google Ads, interestingly enough, had some type of bug, which wasn't a bug. It was kind of like a feature test, where in the search terms report, they stopped hiding searches. So back in September of last year, Google said we're going to stop showing pretty much all search term data in the search terms report, where the advertiser community got really upset, which of course makes sense because we're paying for keywords, why you're not telling us what we're paying for. So we found out there was some type of feature that released for like a couple hours or something, maybe a day or so, where if you went to the search terms report in Google Ads, you were able to download every single one of your keyword data. That went away shortly after, and then I asked Ginny Marvin from Google about this, and she said later last night that the team is exploring ways to share more data in the search terms report while remaining privacy safe. I'll have more to share in the coming weeks. So it seems like Google is actually going to go ahead and give us more search term data in our search terms report in Google Ads. Really exciting about that. Microsoft Advertising announced a bunch of their features for the past month or so, and those features include target impression share bidding, integral ad science, IAS protection, new automated extensions, labels for account organization, and changes to unified counts. You want to learn more about that? Definitely take a look at that. Google Search is testing a new carousel called Discussions. It's kind of like the forum carousel, the forum information that you would see back in the old days, but here's a screenshot of this new Discussions carousel. Microsoft Bing has been testing this called Let's Chat feature. It's an AI-based bot that kind of uses search to actually answer your questions, but through chat. Very interesting. Bing also has launched this Did You Know box in the search results. Here's a screenshot of that as well. And Google Analytics seems to now be tracking Google Discover traffic and Google News Showcase. It seems like some type of weird release from Google Analytics, but they're basically, it seems like John Mueller confirmed that Google is looking for ways for Google Analytics to actually show Google Discover traffic and Google News Showcase. Right now, it seems to be a bug, whatever you see in Google Analytics around Discover and News Showcase, but it looks like Google is actually looking to implement some way for us to see this information. So great news, more search term data, more Google Analytics data, but at the same time, Google is actually clarifying a bunch of things they said earlier about core updates, page experience updates, and so forth. So hope you enjoyed the news this week. Again, my name is Barry Schwartz. This is the search news we covered over at the Search Engine Roundtable at seroundtable.com over the past week. Thanks again to Loud Interactive for sponsoring. Check them out at loud.us. Everyone have a great weekend. Be safe, and I'll see you guys next. Goodbye.